So here we are. I've finished my tables. I've got my 3 graphs. For my sample IB physics experiment, I dropped something from different heights and recorded the time. That's not straight, so I did a power function test, a log-log graph, and that's how I straightened it out. I had to take my independent variable height and raise it to the power of 1.5. So every x value here, every x value got raised to the 1.5 power. And I made a new graph, and bam, I've got my error bars because I propagated uncertainty. So the vertical error bars are the uncertainty in my y values. The horizontal error bars are my uncertainty in the x values. And now I need to do max and min slopes. And here is the end result. You're not gonna have this graph. This is just me helping visualize. You're gonna have something like this. Uh-oh, I can't move it, because my points are moving. What's going on? That point doesn't move with it. So careful. Don't move your graph after you do the work. Don't resize it after you do the work, because now everything looks weird. But you're going to have a final graph with max and min slopes. For the red line, you're going to have a slope value and an intercept value. Same for purple. You'll have percent uncertainty and absolute uncertainty in the slope. And then you'll have just absolute uncertainty in the y-intercept. Finally, you will have a final equation, which will serve as your conclusion. And you can get really fancy and even do parentheses there. Doesn't that look sleek? Yes, it does. So how do we get there? First, you need a copy of this final graph, the final linear graph. So you can click on the white space on your keyboard, Control-C or Command-C for a Mac. Click down below on an empty cell, Command-V. Size this the way you want right now, because as you saw, you can't change any of the shape later on, or you'll mess up your objects you've added, the lines. So I think that's a good size. When I copy and paste this into Word, it'll look good. It'll be a good size. Next, you can zoom in. Remove the remove the trend line. So click on it and click delete. And just a heads up, you got to click it and delete like 3 times, 4 times sometimes. So keep going. If it doesn't delete, just keep trying. Next, we need to add minor grid lines, because if you do you're going to need to know 2 points for the max line and 2 points for the min line. And so you need to see more grid lines to get good data points. All right, hit the plus, then hover over grid lines and click the right arrow, and check the box for minor grid lines, minor X and minor Y grid lines. There they are. If you double click one of these values over here, then a pane appears. Hit the bar graph on the far right, and you can actually set the value, the increment, to whatever you want. If I do 2 and click enter, I now have twice as many X grid lines. Or what are those? Yeah, Y grid lines, because I'm highlighting the Y axis. Then I click on the X axis. I can set the minor unit as 0.2 if I want. Add more grid lines. Next, I have to add max and min slope lines. So click on the graph somewhere in the white space. Click Insert, Illustrations, and Shapes, and then choose the first line option. Next, you can just click anywhere inside of this graph, and it adds the line. Before you start moving it, you can, with your mouse, click Control-C and Control-V to add a second line, or you can just do the process again, Insert, Illustrations, Shapes, and then the line that you just used. Click anywhere on the graph. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to do before I start is I'm going to click on, this line is selected. I'm going to do Shape Format over here. That only appears when the line is selected. I'll use Shape Outline to make this line purple. And then I'm also going to click Shape Outline again to increase its weight, perhaps to 1 or 1.5 maybe. I click on the other. I do the same thing. This keeps disappearing. You see that? Let's double click to make it stay there. I'm also going to hit the X right here. Although you can notice you can change it here as well. Instead of shape outline, you could choose red here and make it 1.5 point and hit enter for that thickness. Let's click the X and scroll down. Now I'm going to have to move this around so that it, and you can click the bubbles to move just the end. You can click in the middle to move the entire line up or down. So you want to draw a line that passes through as many of the error bars as possible, but you're not going to get them all. That's just not feasible. One line will be the steepest while still getting through the error bars. The other line will be the shallowest. Now, you might notice something. If you look carefully at what I'm doing, you might notice something odd. The first thing is that this red line doesn't appear to hit that point at all. But remember that really, you've got kind of an error box. And that's what I drew here. You don't need to draw this. Don't spend the time doing it. But just visualize those boxes. Oh, what happened? They got shifted. In theory, this data point right here, this one, the X error bars show you the uncertainty in height to the 1.5. Yeah, we don't know exactly where that point is on the x-axis, but the idea behind uncertainty is it's somewhere in that range. And likewise, vertically, it's somewhere in this range. And so the data point could actually be anywhere inside the box. So you want your max and min lines, ideally, to pass through as many error boxes as you can. But what about these two right here? Right? Well, and this one here. You can't possibly hit all of those. And if I look back at my original line, my original trend line, look at this. My trend line missed those error boxes altogether as well. But, I'm also missing this one, and I'm missing this one, I think. So maybe I could do a little bit better job. Maybe I could move it down, and you'll sort of realize, like, okay, what's the right way? You can play around with this and, do your best. Remember that you can move them up and down, as well as changing the endpoints. So you've got a lot of things to control here, okay? Like this line feels like it's missing so many. But anyway, you do your best. Once you have your lines, here's a trick. You can hold Shift on the keyboard, Shift, click the end with your mouse, and if you drag the end out, it will not change the slope. So that's a nice trick. Next, you want to actually add physical data points, dots, like this. And you can add text boxes for the coordinates. That's so fancy. So this is where, again, whenever you add something to, see how when I move my graph, the lines move with it? That's because I was clever and I selected the graph before inserting the shape. If you click over here and you insert a shape when a cell is selected, right? Like watch this. If I insert another line, even if I click on the graph, that line is not attached to the graph. So anyway, okay, point is, click on the graph, insert, illustrations, shapes, and click the oval. You can click to add an oval, make it a black dot altogether. Or if you want to color coordinate it, you could make the outline red and the fill red also. Hold Shift on the keyboard and click the corner box. Drag it in to size it down. If you don't hold Shift, then you're going to have to eyeball it to make sure you're not creating an oval. That's fine. That's no big deal. All right, now drag it and drag it down over a point, over, an actual data point, like 2 vertices. Choose your points and find the coordinates. Now, if you click to move this, it just got huge. Here's a trick. Click away from it, click on a cell, click the dot, and hold down when you click it, and now you're moving it. So I'm going to put it, where does it cross 2 grid lines? I think I put it here. And again, I'm going to click away. Check this out. Hold Control on your keyboard and then click with your mouse and drag it down. And now because you're holding Control, you just created a duplicate. And so it looks like it passes through that point as well. I'm going to click away, hold Control, click the mouse, and what else do we hit? Maybe that's a good spot. Change the color when we hit Shape Format at the top. You don't have to color coordinate. It's just fun. I mean, what else are you going to do on a Friday night, right? Okay, hold Control. I click away off to the side. Hold Control, click the dot, drag over to here. What grid line do we pass through? It looks like it hits right there. And then I click away. You see how I'm clicking away always. It's just habit. Next, I need to add a text box for each point that shows the coordinate. Select the graph, insert, and illustrations, shapes, text box. Click anywhere on the graph. Figure out what your coordinates are by looking at your axes, and whoops, like 2, 5. These are clearly wrong. You can even color coordinate the text color if you want. Click, with this selected, you can select the triple click to select all the data, the text, then shape format, text fill, purple. Then I click in, and then I click the border. See how if I click the border, I'm no longer, my cursor disappeared, and I've selected the object. I'm not editing the text. I hold Control, I click and drag, I release, and now I have a copy. This one's still there. So I'm just making up values that are like definitely wrong. Like, I don't know, what is this, 80, 92 or something? These I didn't even try to be correct. That was 0, and maybe that's like 2, 4, I'm not sure. Then I'm going to click off to the side. You see how much of a habit that is. I hold Control, I click and I drag, I release, and now I can let go of Control. Change the text, so shape format. If your cursor is inside flickering and you try to change the color, it's not going to work. You would have to select the text and then change the color, or you can just select the object and change the fill of the text. Click off, hold Control, click and drag. Let's see there. I didn't check what this might be. I don't know, 11? I mean, clearly it's like 11 point something, but And then this 2, perhaps. And I'm being so careless. This would not do well. 2 and 20. That's a nice one. Easy. Okay, and if I move this, in theory, everything moves with it, which is good. It just reduces the risk of error, because I might accidentally move this without realizing it. So anyway. Okay, next we need max and min slopes. We need max and min y-intercepts. The way I'm going to do this is red line, and then down here, purple line. There are 2 points, point 1, oops, point 2. Let me move those down. Each point has an x coordinate and a y coordinate. And for the red line, I'm going to calculate the slope and the intercept. Y-intercept. I'll do this all again for the purple line, so I'm going to copy this, click here and paste. Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste. Notice when you paste, you don't have to match the correct size. You can just click the first cell and paste, and it'll do it for you. Hit escape to make those dotted lines disappear. Okay, for the red line, let's see, what was it? 2, 20. For the, okay, and then this was 11, 120. And for the purple line, it was 2, 2, and 7, 92. Time for our fancy formulas. Equals slope, open paren. Select the y's, comma, select the x's. Close your parentheses and hit enter. Equals intercept, open paren. Select your y's, comma, select your x's, close paren. Hit enter. You can copy these if you'd like and paste them down here. Double click to double check and make sure that it's using the correct the correct y's and x's. Click here, enter the cell, the formula bar. Yep, we're looking good. All right, so which one is the maximum slope? You don't even have to think about it before you get started. This is bigger, so I'm going to call that the max slope. This is clearly the smaller y-intercept, right? This is -2 versus -34. All right, so this is the minimum y-intercept. That's the maximum y-intercept because it's bigger. And this is the minimum slope. By the way, notice how the purple line is the shallowest, so that's minimum slope, but it's the maximum intercept. So that's expected that they're flipped. If you want to be really, if you plan to put this graph in your IA, the best would be instead of x, you have height to the 1.5. Highlight that, Control 1 on a PC, Windows brings up this, and you can select superscript, hit OK. Oh, I did it too early, because now I have to unsuperscript it. That's annoying. And this is in meters to the 1.5. Notice how I added my close paren here so that I could highlight and only have to do the superscript button once without unsuperscripting later. Hit enter. The y is time in seconds. Control I is how I'm going in and out of italics. Whoops, copy that, paste it. So now we need the slope. We need the absolute uncertainty in slope. What's the unit for that? Meters to the 1.5. Highlight, Control 1, superscript, enter. Let me expand that cell. Go up here between L and M, that line. There we go. Next, I need percent uncertainty in slope. That doesn't have any units. And absolute uncertainty in y-intercept, which is in seconds because the y-intercept is a y value. The y value is seconds. Here we do equals, oh no, you don't need that. Just pick the biggest, maximum slope, minus the minimum over 2. So, okay, and immediately round it to 1 sig fig. Because uncertainty, absolute uncertainty has just 1 sig fig. So look back up here. Where's the final function? 10 right there. It's not 10.202, it's just 10. You don't need these digits here because, yeah, they're not significant. You round this slope. That's way too many digits. Round it based on its uncertainty. The percent, you take the absolute uncertainty, divide by the value, 10.202, right? And then turn that into a percent with this button. Ew, that's kind of high. Oops. The absolute uncertainty in the y-intercept, same deal, open paren, max minus min over 2. Round to 1 sig fig. We're gonna have to make that 20 for 1 sig fig, so I can just manually override. And so that 3 there, oh geez, maybe, okay, I don't want to turn that to a 0. If I wanted to round to the ones place, it would become 0. So I'm just going to leave this 16. But like, oh my gosh, that's such a huge uncertainty. I mean, we would get a massive percent, so we're not going to calculate it. Not because we don't want to show something that looks bad. The reason we don't calculate it is most of you have small y-intercepts. So don't divide by such a tiny near 0 value. You know, inevitably that'll give a huge percentage, even if your uncertainty is small. So the percent uncertainty doesn't really help much. It doesn't say much for in this context because we would be dividing by such a tiny value. And so it's meaningless. It doesn't help. It doesn't have much significance, and so we don't do it. The final piece, that final function now, I'm going to copy this. Don't do it on the graph. The changes you want to make are not in the graph, but this will be in the report itself. Paste. And I'll show you my process as I go. So the first thing is I replace y with, well, what's on the y-axis in my case? Time. What's on my x-axis? Height to the 1.5. Control 1, superscript. Okay. The next thing I change, and I keep making new copies to show you my process. I'm going to add parentheses around the slope value, and around that. You don't really need parentheses here, but I don't know, it just kind of looks good. That's my preference. And then I'm going to round this 10.202. Maybe I'll even do that as a separate step. So, okay, the uncertainty in slope, the absolute, is 3. So I don't need those digits. Technically, it's 10 point, so that the 0 is significant. What about this? I'm going to round that to the ones place to match the rounding of the uncertainty. And I let the uncertainty here have 2 sig figs to avoid making that a 0 altogether. All right. The next step, and I'll copy and paste so you can see the process, add units. We already did it, but slope is y units over x units. Whoops, seconds over meters to the 1.5. And instead of units in the denominator, I'm going to make it negative exponents. Control 1, superscript. The y-intercept is a y value. Add its units, which is just whatever you have on the y-axis. And I am done. So now I have my final function, which I'm going to present. Notice that the final function does not actually display the uncertainty, right? That comes later. You'll do that later. Notice that when I plug h here, I do not put units of meters to the 1.5 anywhere with h. Those units would get substituted in when you plugged in the value. So don't put, like, sometimes people do this, time in seconds. Don't do that. That's not the right way to go. Instead, just give the appropriate units to the slope and the intercept. And that is how you add your max and min lines. Then you can just copy this graph, paste it into a Word, into your IA, your document. You could also take a screenshot if you wanted. You could even include this stuff off to the side. You could add borders, you could center this, merge and center, add a border, add a border. The border I'm adding is this one, outside borders. It shows up under the Home tab. Same thing if you want. But this is the process. So thanks for watching this video. And you can copy and paste this stuff into your IA too if you want.